Hello everyone, my name is Owen Longacre and today I'm going to present to you an e-learning project that I have been working on during the summer semester at JMU that was designed for a client called ESD Innovate. ESD Innovate is a international cooperative that currently consists of 6 different partners who are mostly university professors from across 3 different continents. Now, what ESD Innovate actually stands for, if you see in the upper left-hand corner, is Education for Sustainable Development International Learning Collaborative. Currently, this group is still in the prototype stage, and they have been focusing on exploring and developing new e-learning technology that moves learning from being stationary and passive to being participatory and transformative. And so this group is a very fascinating group. They work with many different students and teachers from different cultures and time zones and universities across the world, ranging from South Africa to Switzerland to the United States. And so this is a very interesting opportunity to combine multiple perspectives into one project. Now, the reason that I worked with ESD Innovate is because of their need. Where my project comes into play is that I have been working towards helping ESD Innovate realize their goal of offering sustainable development education to students across the globe by developing an independent learning object that could be used as part of their overall platform and delivery in ESD Innovate. When it comes to ESD Innovate, e-learning really is a necessity due to the fact that this is an international initiative that spans over many time zones, and therefore it must have the option to be delivered autonomously. By creating separate learning objects, this allows ESD to be sensitive about time zones, about cultural customs, and also about the fact that different universities across the globe will start classes and start their coursework at different times of the year. And therefore, while these learning objects might be interactive across different universities, they need to have the ability to be autonomous if necessary. In addition, through a learning management system, which I will show you here in a minute, ESD Innovate can also deliver many of these courses for a relatively low cost, which could be attractive to universities to adopt, and also be differentiated very easily for different universities considering their environment and the areas that they live in. So e-learning is certainly a necessity here. My job is not to create all of the e-learning courses, but to create one separate unit, and I'll talk about how many total units there could potentially be. When I created this unit, the target audience were pre-service and in-service teachers across all relevant subjects who want and are expected to promote sustainability as part of their teaching. So I'm going to click down here to the next page, which is Our Focus, just so you can see their homepage. And their focus is really on showing new and current teachers how they can incorporate sustainability into their teaching. So ESD has actually run a course before the one I created. I'm now going to transition over and just show you that. I'll transition over to their homepage here on their learning management system. You can see here in the middle that they have already created one course that had students interact and work with each other. And this second course, called Sustainable Consumption and Production, is this course that I've been working on this semester. So, in some ways, ESD is still up and running. They are kind of sailing the ship as they are building it, I've heard them say. And so, the options and the ways this come out can look a little different. So, when it comes to creating these units, we also got to look at the intended outcomes and what we are looking for in this e-learning principles. And the topic that I chose was sustainable consumption and production. However, there were many options because ESD Innovate, what they are basing their content off of are a list of what are called Sustainable Development Goals. These are published by the United Nations, And there are actually 17 total goals. I'll show you them here on this webpage. And there are many, many different topics that range from poverty to innovation and infrastructure to sustainable consumption and production. And so what my job was is to pick one of these major topics that ESD Innovate wants to create a learning unit on and begin to put together some activities and interactivity that could be used in the future for them. So in my mind, there really is a large potential for creating other learning objects like this due to the fact that there are many, many different topics that are available. However, since ESD's ultimate goal is to have students apply their learning to current or future teaching, then the intended outcome does not revolve necessarily around the SDGs, but more around the learner and what they are wanting that learner to be able to do with the information once they have completed a course through ESD. So the intended outcome for this particular unit, as I transition back to the dashboard, is that students will comprehend the information with minimum competency standards, which I'll talk about in a minute, and also find examples of how to apply this into their current teaching. So these courses are going to require that not only that the students learn certain concepts and information, but they are also applying this to their work and to their current areas of teaching as they move on from the course. Now, let's now talk about the content and the flow that we'll see within the course. At this point, I'm going to click on the Sustainable Consumption and Production course. This is what the course that I have been working on and creating. And when you click on this, you will come to a home page where you can immediately see the welcome box here. Now, when it comes to flow for this particular unit, I did keep the same type of framework and design, from the first course that ESD made, just with some upgrades and different moving around of things. So this particular course can be broken down into essentially 5 mini objects. There's a welcome page, there's an introduction page, and then there's going to be tasks 1 through 3. And we're going to look at each one of those throughout this presentation. Now, as you can see from this current page, all 5 of those mini objects are presented on each page. Now, this is a limitation of the learning management system that we are currently using, which is Moodle. We are not able to create or put all of these learning objects onto separate pages. However, you will see that what we are able to do is hide the activities from the student, and the only way that that student can get into or have access to the activities is to actually click on the particular topic that we see here. So for example, if I clicked on Welcome to ESD Innovate, it would actually take me to a separate page where the content is separate from all of the other smaller learning objects. And this is really great because it reduces the cognitive overload for the students. It makes it very linear as to what they were doing and what they are expected to do, and all of their activities for that particular task, if there are one, are going to be presented on that page. So while Moodle does not allow us to create separate pages right from the get-go, it does allow us to do this, and then the students can work their way through these activities. And as we start to get into mini objects with activities, you will see these listed below in the actual units. So during this demonstration, I will use these. I'll show you how these activities work together. But at this time, I just want to talk in overall ideas of some of the design strategies that we use during this time. First off, I briefly mentioned this as I go back to the home page here. The one thing that I wanted to make sure I did as I created this course that was not present in one of the first ones was to segment material. I felt like this was very important for students to be able to move throughout the course, but also not have too much information presented to them at one time, so that they could process information, store it away, and then begin working with new information. So as often as possible, you'll see material segmented into bits and pieces so that there's never too much presented at one time. Secondly, when I designed these pages and these courseworks, I also was very focused on how can I promote engagement with the material. In other words, how can I ensure that this is not just passive learning, but this is social learning, which is active learning, and that puts ownership on the learner themselves. So all the activities that we'll see and that we'll look at, either the activity itself or the end goal of the activity is to have the learners interact with other students in their course and to take information that they might learn from an absorb activity and apply that into their current situation. So the activities will vary in their content and in their delivery, but the end goal is always to have them be social, talk with other people from different cultures, and interact with the topic at hand. Third, as far as the design strategy, you can see this briefly on the home page. I tried to design each page to be very similar in its delivery so that each page will look familiar and the students will recognize what they were supposed to do. For instance, you'll see in the introduction there is a overall piece here, there is a picture, and then when you click on these individual things, the activities would have been listed below. Here is task number 1. There's an overall idea with a learning objective, a picture, and then the activities will be presented below once you click on the learning object. You see the same idea here with each of the other tasks. So it's very important to have consistency throughout your design, and that's evident there. And then finally, when it comes to quizzes that we will see, I'm going to go to a quiz right now under task number 1. The quizzes are really examples to me of, here is a quiz, of deliberate practice and limiting the amount of questions that the students need to only what is absolutely necessary. Sometimes on quizzes you'll find many questions, and while they are all relevant to the topic at hand, they do not allow the students to just achieve mastery and then move on right away, and therefore can waste time and frustrate especially adult learners. So these quizzes are short in their intention. They show whether or not the student has comprehended that information. And then if they are not doing well, all of the quizzes have the option to go back and rework their answers a second, third, fourth time, as many as they need, until they can achieve a score that is not only meets the minimum competency, but shows that the students have actually learned some of the information that they are intended to. So those are some of our design strategies, and these design decisions, as I come back to the top, are really coming from some underlying theories and some ideas that are based on empirical research in the e-learning world. And in particular, the main theory for this particular project was the knowledge construction theory. This is the idea that people are active sense makers, and that they are encouraging and we encourage the students to engage in their cognitive processing during learning. So at no point in this unit will they sit back and work passively as an independent learner. They are expected to be involved. They are expected to respond to one another, to communicate with not only themselves but with others. And therefore, this is not just an opportunity for them to acquire information or to, as the information acquisition theory would say, this is not just them sitting back and getting pummeled with information. This is them interacting, having different answers to different problems, and then talking them out through different blog posts and interactivity. So the idea here is to make things relevant, to have material for them so that they can do active processing and work their way through these things. And that is really supported by the research that I have worked with from our books with Clark and Mayer, as well as Horton, that shows that learning, interactivity is really key to learning, because we define learning by the change in what the learners knows through an experience. So our job as e-learning designers, or my job as an e-learning designer, is to use instruction to manipulate that learning experience and ensure that there is a change in the learner, and that change is the knowledge and the information that we want them to receive. So good instruction is where the designer really comes in. Good instruction ensures that the learner not only just changes, but changes exactly to, or learns and changes the information that we want them to learn. So research shows that if e-learning is designed in a particular fashion, it can be very successful. It has to be developed in a different way than typical instruction in a classroom or in a or personal environment would be. And those things have been considered throughout the entire process creation of this entire unit. And then finally, the principles of e-learning itself that I have used are useful when it comes to creating something like this. Because e-learning is really its own unique topic within instructional design, there are certain rules and principles that are different for e-learning, and I'm going to explain just a few of these and show you how I implemented those. For example, as I come back to the course homepage here, the first one that I used was the contiguity principle, and this is the idea where printed words near corresponding graphics, that you should always have printed words near the graphic. So each time you see a graphic on this particular piece, you will see an explanation of why that graphic is relevant or important. That's to allow the learner to understand why that graphic is there, and also so they do not try to assume some additional importance for that. Second is the modality principle. This is where, when we come to the PowerPoints, I've presented the words as, the modality principle says that you can either present the words as speech or text, but not both. And so what you'll find when I show you PowerPoints is that speech, the content that I want, is actually presented to them in speech, and that'll be my voiceover rather than text. I believe that there are definitely dual code channeling process, and the verbal audio that learners learn from is important to consider. And for this particular piece, I believe the audio is a much stronger way of learning, so that people can actually listen to and incorporate these principles into their learning. And then it also allows them to go back and listen again if they did not get it the first time. And then the final principle that I use is the coherence principle. This principle is where you want to be careful about not adding too much interesting material that can actually hurt e-learning. For example, I'll go to task 2 here. There are lots of opportunities to add pictures, to add multimedia content, and to add different links to different areas and whatnot. But the coherence principle really states that always less is more, and that when we try to add too much, we often do more harm than good. So you'll see a somewhat simple approach to how these activities are presented. There's one picture per task, and that really is with the intention to keep the learning simple, so that the learner can go through and they can understand what they are doing without all these extra blinking lights and things going on. So as I look back on creating this product, I did take a few takeaways I just want to share with you before we get to the actual piece. First off, design takes time. Design needs to be collaborative, and it needs to incorporate multiple perspectives. I have worked with several different professors informally, and also fellow peers more formally in class, and it is amazing how each time they see my product, they see little bits and pieces that can be easily improved, that either I glazed over because I've been working with the same thing for a long time, or that maybe I did not have the correct perspective on. And it is so helpful with design to have people talk about what they see, so that the designer can make the necessary improvements as they go about. There's no way to get around it. Design takes multiple people, but also takes time. You have to sit down and really think what the learner is going to do and what the learner needs and how you move about. And then the second takeaway that I got from this is also scope. When you're creating an e-learning course, and this kind of goes into the idea that design takes time, but it's very important to be very clear about what the scope of your project is. For ESD Innovate, that changed several times, but once we finalized what the actual coursework would look like at the very end, it allows for the e-learning designer to put some direction into their work and not just flail around helplessly trying to create too much content and not do that content well. Being specific allows for quality to improve and for focus to really be honed down into what you need to do. So getting with your clients, getting with your stakeholders, and assessing what that scope is from a very beginning is something that I found is very helpful. So the reflection piece, I'll talk more about that as we go on, but at this point I wanted to show you just a really brief idea of what a lesson like this would look like. When the learner come in, I'm actually going to go to the student view at this time. So everything you see here on the recording from here on out will actually be from the student role. And you can see it's very similar from the beginning. But when a student would come in here, every task that they are asked to do is going to be linear, meaning that they're going to have to click that they have completed the prior task before they can move on to the next task. And therefore, the very first thing that they'll have access to when they come in here is the Welcome tab. So the student would click on the Welcome tab, and they'll have a description of what ESD Innovate is about. This actually came from the prior course with the ESD Innovate logo. And once they've read this, once they've had a chance to read this, they'll then click Next to the Introduction piece. Now, if they tried to skip ahead to any of the other tasks, they would be brought back to this. They would not allow to be moved on. And again, you'll see the same type of format here in the introduction. Now, as we go down, you'll see there are two activities in the introduction. The activity itself, which is an introductory PowerPoint, once they click this link, it'll begin to download for those individuals. And I'll do that now. And this, as this file downloads, you can read the description of what they're supposed to do. In this case, it says each slide incorporates a voiceover tutorial. So when they bring this PowerPoint up, they would then be able to listen to each individual. So at this point, I'll bring up that PowerPoint that I just clicked on. In this case, it is talking about a sustainability worldview. And you can see on each slide there is an audio to click that is up to the individual to click. It does not play automatically so that they have time to read the text on the screen and also then listen to the audio. The audio itself will rewind every time that it's finished. So on this particular slide it's 38 seconds. And then once they are done, they can click Next and go to the next slide with the similar outlook and idea. So these directional buttons allow the learners to continue to move on throughout the PowerPoint and learn a little bit about sustainability worldview. And then once they are done, they can come back to the learning module. And the key here, what they'll have to do, and it says this in their directions, is they will have to click these little boxes to show that they are completed. Now, they could technically complete those things without actually doing them, but this will hurt them as they go down throughout the pieces because every activity builds on the one before. So if they're clicking these boxes and they're not actually doing their work, it'll be evident to the professor at some point throughout the learning object. So this introductory PowerPoint, once this is done, the next activity would then be to create a forum post that talks about this word Weltanschauung, which was the title of the PowerPoint. And so here they would click on this. This is actually an interactive forum. And they would respond to this post here that I created as the teacher. And they'd respond to these ideas that are listed here up top. Now, for the forums that ask them to be interactive, they will not be able to see their other students' responses until they have posted a response themselves. So that's a great way of not allowing students to use other people's ideas when they're creating these things, but to have them create original ideas, and then once they submit them, they'll then go back and actually interact with their individuals. So this is their first forum post, and if I go back to the previous slide, once they complete it, I would then click the box to show that they're done. Give that 1 second to load. Okay. click that second box, and I would move on then to task number 1. And task number 1 and task number 2 are going to be much more complicated than the introductory piece. They're going to incorporate videos, they're going to incorporate activities such as an eco footprint calculator for the individual to do, and they'll also incorporate more forum posts that ask the students to respond to one another and ensure that there is some interactivity within those posts. So due to the fact that my computer does not seem to be loading currently at the moment, I believe I'm actually going to end there. This lesson will be available if you would like to go back and create this. I've talked a little bit today about the principles and the research and the design strategies that went into creating this learning object on the learning management system of Moodle. And really this topic is, to me, one unit that could be incorporated into a much larger platform that is ESD Innovate. So the next step for this would be to present this to the client, to have them get some feedback and maybe put some final implementations. But this is my semester project, and I hope you all enjoyed. Take care.